Brother Lopez, members of the executive, delegates, I very much regret not being able to be with you at this important conference. I know how important it is. The world is very bleak for working people. So your priorities, your ideas, your decisions around how to organise for decent work, these are important to us because they provide examples and generate the enthusiasm that we need to organise workers everywhere. Building workers' power is our mandate. Organising, organising, organising. That underpins everything that the ITUC sets out to do. The reason we are so committed to organising workers, to building the power of workers and strengthening their unions, is because the world for workers is today very bleak. 60% of a global workforce of around 3 billion people, 60% of them only are in the formal economy. And even then, more than half of those workers actually face precarious or insecure and unsafe work. They survive on poverty wages and indeed have little or no social protection in too many cases. Access to rights and the rule of law is not always guaranteed. But then there are 40% of our brothers and sisters who indeed are in the informal economy. We call it the sector of desperation. They have no access to the rule of law, no rights, no minimum wages, and indeed no social protection. When you consider that that section is growing in our economy, then it's further undermining decent work in the formal economy. So we must fight to organise and formalise jobs everywhere. There are sadly, tragically, 45 million of our brothers and sisters enslaved in modern slavery. It's 2016, but informal work and slavery are still appearing in global supply chains. There's still methods of work, particularly for migrant workers, in too many countries where the rule of law for workers is simply non-existent. To be enslaved in a modern economy is in fact to be effectively owned by one other human being, to be denied mobility and of course to be denied fundamental rights or access to remedy. We will not accept a global workforce under these conditions. The global economy cannot survive. It's not sustainable to have 60% of your production now in global supply chains, and for that model to be an impoverished model, one that is based on poverty wages, too often insecure or unsafe work, where minimum wages and the right to collective bargaining are simply not accepted, and of course where governments fail to put in place the rule of law to protect their own citizens. These things are critical for the ITUC and they underpin our front lines and priorities. The ITUC has 3 front lines. We know we must eliminate slavery. That's not decent work. It can never be classified as decent work. And if we don't stand up for the most vulnerable workers, who will? They're our brothers and sisters, and so our fight against the kafala system in Qatar, our fight for the ratification of the forced labour protocol, and indeed the new labour laws that guarantee that slavery will be eliminated. These are organising campaigns for us. We also, of course, have our front lines taming corporate power or ending corporate greed in supply chains. This is fundamental as the greed of corporations is driving that model of supply chains that I described. We need to organise on the ground. We need to build the global campaigns to expose the scandals of corporations who are oppressing workers, who are constructing an environment where violation of workers' rights is actually apparent in the very design. We call it inequality by design. And when the world now has 99% of the people sharing the same wealth as the 1% of the elites, then that's not a world we will accept. We will tame corporate power, we will end corporate greed, and it will begin with us organising workers. We are working with your members and indeed others with the global union federations to target corporates who would exploit workers through their supply chains, just as we're building the global architecture through the ILO, through the G20, through the OECD, where we want to see every company responsible for due diligence, mandated legislative due diligence, where we can prosecute companies that don't do the right thing across borders. But it's our governments who must stand up for their citizens. And fundamental rights, ILO, labour standards, these are the things we want to see in the rule of law. Climate justice, it goes without question that there are no jobs on a dead planet. This is far more than a slogan for us. We are actually witnessing the loss of lives and livelihoods as too many people face extreme weather events, changing seasons, the nature of industries shifting so that jobs are disappearing. We want a just transition. We know we have to transition to a low carbon economy. Last year, the world's leaders took two fundamental decisions. One was the Sustainable Development Goals, and the other one was the climate agreement in Paris. Together, these chart a course for the world of social justice we want, a zero poverty, zero carbon world. But we must see poverty ended with the recipe we know works, with social protection, with a minimum wage on which you can live, a minimum living wage, with collective bargaining rights and the access to the rule of law to protect all labour rights and standards. And then for climate justice, we need to see an investment in clean energy, but we also want to see that the workers who we demand respect for, the workers in fossil fuels who brought us the prosperity of today, that they're looked after, their pensions are secure. For younger workers, they are given the support for skills development and transition into new jobs. And of course, we want to see community renewal. We fought for just transition, we got it in the Paris Climate Agreement, and now we want to see it delivered. We are organising domestic workers, we are organising in the informal economy, we are organising to build the power of workers, but it will take all of us. So with our economic and social policy, the recipes for decent work, the recipes for an economy that works for working people, and our capacity to organise and to influence the political outcomes for the rights of workers. These are the tools. This is the strength of the union movement. And I can only thank you for all of your efforts, wish you every success, and say on this event, your Congress, solidarity.